In 1994, Rwanda collapsed into one of the worst economic and human disasters in modern history, where in just 100 days, more than 800,000 people were killed, and the entire structure of the country stopped functioning, with businesses shutting down overnight, banks collapsing completely, factories being abandoned, and the government losing control, which meant there were no jobs, no money flow, no trade, and no system left to support daily life. And this was not just a temporary crisis, but a total economic collapse where everything that makes an economy work, including trust, stability, institutions, and productivity, disappeared at once. And normally, when a country reaches this stage, recovery is almost impossible, because rebuilding an economy is not only about rebuilding infrastructure, but also about rebuilding human trust, social systems, and long-term confidence, which can take generations to restore. But Rwanda decided to take a completely different path. Instead of rushing into growth or trying to fix everything at once, the country focused on one powerful idea, which was stability first and growth later. Because without safety, people cannot work; without law, businesses cannot operate; and without trust, investors will never enter. So the government began by restoring order, enforcing strict laws, and rebuilding institutions. Step by step, even though resources were extremely limited and challenges were massive, as the country was deeply divided and infrastructure was almost non-existent, but the leadership understood that even the smallest signs of stability could begin to change how people feel and how the world perceives the country. So they focused on creating a secure environment where citizens could slowly return to normal life, and this meant reopening local markets, encouraging small-scale trade, restarting agriculture, and ensuring basic services could function again. And while these changes may seem small, they were critical, because economic recovery always begins at the ground level, not at the top. And as local activity started increasing, money slowly began to circulate again, which is the first sign of any recovering economy. And as this circulation increased, confidence also started to return among the people who had lost everything and were now beginning to see small opportunities again. And this shift in mindset is extremely important, because economies are not driven only by numbers, but by human behavior. And when people believe that things can improve, they start taking risks, opening businesses, working harder, and participating in the system again, which creates a positive cycle where activity leads to growth, and growth leads to more confidence. And Rwanda managed to trigger this cycle slowly but effectively. And at the same time, the government made another smart move, which was to rebuild its image internationally, because attracting foreign investment and support was necessary for faster recovery. So they focused on presenting Rwanda as a stable and reform-driven country, where corruption would be controlled, policies would be clear, and business would be supported. And this strategy started working as international organizations and investors began to notice the changes and started to provide financial support and investment, which further boosted the economy and allowed infrastructure development to begin again, including roads, systems, and basic facilities. And this created more jobs, more opportunities, and more economic movement. And as these developments continued, Rwanda also started focusing on long-term planning instead of short-term fixes, by building policies that would support sustainable growth, including improving education, encouraging entrepreneurship, and making the business environment easier and more efficient. And one of the key decisions was to reduce bureaucracy and simplify regulations, so that starting and running a business would become faster and easier, which directly increased economic activity and attracted more entrepreneurs and investors. And over time, this transformed Rwanda into one of the easiest places to do business in Africa, which is a major achievement considering where it started. And this also shows that economic recovery is not about copying other countries, but about making smart decisions based on your own situation. And Rwanda continuously adapted its strategy to focus on what would bring the most impact, whether it was improving agriculture, investing in technology, or building urban infrastructure. And this balanced approach allowed different sectors of the economy to grow together instead of depending on a single source. And as multiple sectors began expanding, the economy became stronger, more stable, and more resilient to shocks. And this is exactly how strong economies are built, not by one big change, but by many small, consistent improvements over time. And Rwanda's journey proves that even after total collapse, it is possible to rebuild if the focus is clear, the strategy is smart, and the execution is consistent, but at this stage the transformation was still incomplete, because while stability had been achieved and growth had started, the real challenge was to maintain this momentum and turn a recovering economy into a powerful and competitive one, and this required a new level of thinking, innovation, and long-term vision, which would push Rwanda into its next phase of development, where it would not just recover, but actually compete with other growing economies and surprise the entire world with its progress. And this is where the real story begins. But what happened next is what truly shocked the world, because Rwanda did not stop at recovery. It decided to completely reinvent its economy and transform itself into a modern, growth-driven nation, where instead of relying only on agriculture like most developing countries, it started investing heavily in technology, infrastructure, and services, which was a bold move, because it required long-term vision, discipline, and execution. And the government understood that if Rwanda wanted to compete globally, it could not remain dependent on traditional sectors. So it focused on building a knowledge-based economy by improving education, digital systems, and innovation. And this is where things started accelerating rapidly, as Rwanda invested in internet connectivity, smart city projects, and digital governance systems, making it one of the most technologically advanced countries in Africa, despite its size and history. And this created a new wave of opportunities where businesses could operate more efficiently, services could reach more people, and international companies could see Rwanda as a serious investment destination. And at the same time, the country continued strengthening its business environment by making regulations, simple taxes more predictable, and corruption extremely low, which is one of the key reasons why investors trust Rwanda today, because in many developing countries, corruption acts like a hidden tax that slows down growth. But Rwanda tackled this problem strictly, which increased efficiency, transparency, and confidence. And as a result, global companies and organizations started entering the market, bringing capital, expertise, and employment opportunities, which further boosted economic expansion and created a strong foundation for long-term growth. And another major shift was Rwanda's focus on becoming a regional hub for trade and services by improving infrastructure such as roads, airports, and logistics networks, which made it easier to connect with neighboring countries and participate in regional and international trade. And this strategy turned Rwanda into an important gateway for business in East Africa and increased its economic importance beyond its size and population. And while all this was happening, Rwanda also invested heavily in tourism, branding itself as a premium destination, especially known for its wildlife and clean environment, which brought in foreign currency and supported multiple industries, including hospitality, transport, and local businesses. And this diversification of the economy was critical because it reduced risk and created multiple streams of income, making the economy more stable and resilient. And as these sectors grew, Rwanda's GDP started increasing consistently, and poverty levels began to decline, which showed that growth was not just happening on paper, but also improving real lives. And this is one of the most important indicators of successful economic policy, because true growth should benefit the population, not just statistics. And Rwanda managed to achieve this balance by focusing on inclusive development, where opportunities were created across different levels of society. And this approach strengthened the overall system and ensured long-term sustainability. And however, the journey was not without challenges, because rapid growth always brings pressure on infrastructure resources, and governance in Rwanda had to continuously adapt, improve, and innovate to maintain its progress. But the key difference was that the country had built a strong foundation of stability, discipline, and strategic planning, which allowed it to handle these challenges more effectively than many other nations. And today, Rwanda stands as an example of how a country can rise from complete destruction to become a fast-growing and stable economy by focusing on the right priorities, making smart decisions, and maintaining long-term vision. And this story teaches one powerful lesson: that economies are not defined by their past failures, but by their ability to rebuild, adapt, and move forward. Because even after losing everything, a country can start again if it builds trust, creates stability, and focuses on sustainable growth. And Rwanda's transformation is proof that with the right strategy, execution, and mindset even, the most impossible recovery can become reality. And this is exactly how you rebuild an economy from absolute zero.